So how much do you know about percentages and decimals and that sort of thing? What's important, I think, about today is that you really think about these. Again, try not to just go with the rules. Try to make sense of how decimals and fractions and percentages are related. And if you understand, if it clicks for you and then you get it, you'll always know it. Okay, so let's take a look here. We're looking at decimals, fractions, and percentages. And we're going to kind of talk about all three of those things. The fractions part is maybe just part of the process, but we'll have some fractions along the way. Okay, but these are three ways of writing the same thing. And what does it really mean? What do all of them mean? They're all just numbers. And so I can think about a number as a position on a number line. Let's say this is 0, and this is 1, and this is 2. Okay? Where is 0.5 on this number line? It's right here. Whether I write it as a fraction or percentage or a decimal doesn't change the location on the number line. Where is 0.15? Does anybody want to guess? Where about? Is it to the left of 0.5 or to the right of 0.5? So over here somewhere, you think? And why do you think that? Yeah. Why do you think it's in between them? Like, what about that decimal? And I'm asking anybody, not just Ashton. What about that decimal? When you look at decimal numbers, how do you know if they're bigger or smaller? Okay, let's try this. We'll come back to that. Let's convert this to a percentage. Does anybody know what percentage 0.5 is? Do you just already know what it is? Anybody? 50%. Who likes that idea? Who likes that answer? I like that answer. There's a couple of ways we can convert things to percentages. One is just by multiplying by 100. Okay, so that's pretty easy. So if I do 0.5 times 100%, that equals, and I'm just going to do it literally on my calculator, 0.5 times 100. This is something, again, that I think a lot of people, like a lot of you will be good at what we're doing today and you'll like it, especially once we get on to the next page. But then in a few weeks, you might forget how to convert a decimal to a percentage or vice versa. So really keep that in mind that you want to figure out a way to try to remember this and sort of always remember it. So there you go, 50%. We write the percent symbol in. That's really important that we do that. I want you to go ahead and try to do B, C, and D. And you can actually do E and F if you can fit them all on your board and just have them written on your board for when we take them up. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Go for it. There's all other kinds of tricks with percentages. I see some people it doesn't look like you're using a calculator, you're just writing the percentage, and that's fine. In fact, that's kind of what we want. There's no way that you have to do this. There's tricks like you move the decimal 2 places, or you multiply by 100, it does the same thing. What'd you get for the next one? Can somebody tell me? Oh, and I just want to say 0.5 is the same as a half. Right? Like it means the same thing. So a half, 50%, 50% means a half of something. This is what I was talking about before. Think about what it means. A percentage is a part of something. 25% of the job is done. Means you're a quarter of the way done. I've eaten 50% of the pizza means I ate half the pizza. I got 80% on the test means I got like 80%. So parts of the questions correct and then some parts wrong. I got 20% wrong and 80% right. It doesn't mean there was 100 marks, right? 80% on a test, whatever it was out of, you got 80% of those marks. Maybe it was out of 10 and you got 8. This is what a percentage means. So again, we talk about it, we think about it like a fraction or like a decimal. It can be written all those ways, but it always means the same thing. Okay, who's got an answer for the next one? B. Walker, what'd you have? For B. 15%. So 0.15 times 100 gives you 15, so 15%. Is 15% bigger or smaller than 50%? Now we can really see that it's smaller. It's like 15 or 0.115. 0.003 is going to be even smaller. It's going to be way down in here somewhere. And then you might think of 100% like the whole thing. That's 100%. 1. That might be a weird thing to think about, but that's actually the way that it works. 100% is like the number 1 when you're thinking about comparing it with decimals. Okay, what did we get for C? Somebody? Somebody else? Jade, what'd you get? Did you have C done? Huh? What'd you do? Did you just multiply by 100? I love it. What'd you get? 0.3%. I love it. Again, make sure you put the percentage sign because if you do this, that looks really weird. 0.003 equals 0.3. Oh, it doesn't. Those are different numbers. When I add the percentage, now it makes sense. 1.34? Nice. 134%. Where would that be? Not halfway, but somewhere right around there. 1.34 is more than 1, more than 100%. 134%. Sometimes that makes sense. Sometimes it might not. 0.5. 5%. And that's interesting because I compare that to 0.5 or 0.05. One of those is 50, one of those is 5%. They're very different, but people sometimes get messed up with the zeros for decimals. So if you see these answers in your head, if you get decimals and percentages in the relationship, awesome. If not, then remember, multiply by 100. And just when in doubt, always use your calculator and do it that way. And then 1, nice, is 100%. And that's really important to think about. It might be a little bit strange, but that's important to think about. So 100%. I'm just going to write that there. Okay, there's our number line, sort of thinking about percentages and decimals and fractions and that sort of thing. We only really looked at one of those as a fraction, but the other thing I can think of, and I don't think, well, you don't need to write this down because we're going to erase it all anyway, but percentage is always like a fraction out of 100. So I could go back and I could do all of these as 15 over 100, or 0.3 over 100, or 134, 34 over 100, right? It's always over 100 if I think about a fraction. And that's really useful because we do this a lot. when I convert a percentage to a fraction, to a decimal, sorry, we turn it into a fraction and we divide. Okay, so we'll take a look. You can erase your boards. We're going to start question 2. 12% is 12 over 100, which is 12 divided by 100. 12 divided by 100, which is 0.12. It's as easy as that. So go ahead and do the rest. You've got 5 questions there to do, and for at least a few of them, I want you to write the percentage over 100 and then do the decimal. And that can help because then we'll remember that to turn it to a decimal, we divide by 100. To turn it into a percentage, we multiply by 100, right? We do the opposite every single time. Okay, good, go. So a lot of people had 0.4 for that first one. Very good. Some of these are like the same question from above, but going the other direction. Who can give me the answer for C? Donovan? 0.05. Very nice. Or 5 over 100. Justin? The next one, D. Restretching, or did you have your hand up? Do you want to do D anyway? Have you done it?
No, that's the only one I do.
Okay. Noah, you had your hand up. Oh, no. Jamarli? 0.03. Everybody agree with that? No? Ashton, what do you think? So this is a really good example of like sometimes when it's already a decimal and it's a percentage, it can be tricky. So this is a really good time where we might disagree. And how do we determine which is the exact right answer? Well, we use that rule, 0.3 divided by 100, 0.003. So there should be 2 zeros because it's 0.3 over 100. So let me squeeze in another 0 there like that. Very good. 107%. Nice. 1.07 and 200%. Brandy, did you do this one? What'd you get? 2. Again, that might seem strange, but that's totally fine. That is exactly right, and that happens. If my bank account grows by 200%, it means it's doubled. I multiplied it by 2. I used to have $10, now I have 20. That's 200%. Okay, we're going to practice using percentages a little bit and do a few different kinds of questions. Of, in mathematics, often means multiply. So 40% of 80 means I turn 40 to a decimal by doing 40 over 100 or 0.4 like we saw in the last question. Either of those is fine. You can always put it over 100. But if you can do the decimal in your head, then do it. Of means times 80. And on my calculator, I just do 40 divided by 100 times 80. That gives me 32. So 40% of 80 is 32. That would mean 32 out of 80 would be 40%, if that was like a test, it wouldn't be a very good mark, but that's what you would get as a percentage there. Does that make sense? Try the next two. All right, I like it. I see a lot of people doing this. 0.3 over 100 times 350. Like taking the time and putting that step down. What'd you get for that? Somebody who got that, Justin? 1.05. Anybody else get the same thing? Awesome. And then the next one, 13% of 64.99 is 13 over 100 times 64.99. Who's got that? Somebody other than Justin and Ashton. 8.44. Awesome. I'm guessing that was rounded. You had to round that? I'm going to take a look because I wonder, I'm just curious. 13 divided by 100 times 64.99, what the numbers actually look like. So 8.448. So I'm going to round that last 4 up to a 5, right? Because the next number is big. Very good. What does that look like? 13% of 64.99. What do you think? Anybody recognize that? Oh, maybe not. Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, so you can erase your board. We're going to do this. You don't have to write down the question. This is kind of why we're using whiteboards today, is because we're going to solve some questions like this. There's a shirt that costs $34.95. How much tax will you pay if you buy the shirt? So these are the kinds of questions that we're going to be doing today, is actually finding percentages of things in real life, as opposed to just calculating answers in math class. What do you think? Go ahead. Do you want to ask me personally, or? What is tax? So this is the question we have to answer. What is tax? Not what is tax in general. I mean, we could talk about that too, but what is the tax rate, Justin? That's what taxes are. It's money when you buy things that goes to the government. Why does it do that? Because the government runs programs like school and healthcare and stuff, and they need money to do that, so they use sales tax or income tax. There's all different kinds of tax, right? But this is called a sales tax because it's tax on something that you buy. Walker? 0.13 is 13%. So when I was your age, taxes were 15%, and that came from 8% provincially, I think, and 7% as a general sales tax. So the 7% is Canada-wide, and then Ontario had an 8%. Or I don't know, that might be, I might have that backwards. And now it's 8% and 5%. And but they've actually put it all together. So now what we have, we call HST, and it's 13%. But this is just in Ontario. You go to different provinces, you pay different tax rates. You go to the states, some states have no tax on things that you buy in the store. Some states have very small tax. There's a few things in Ontario that you only pay GST or you only pay PST. So there's a few things that you'd only pay 5% or you'd only pay 8%, but not very many. It's things like, I think if you're buying a used car from somebody or something like that, you only pay one and not the other, or like diapers, or actually diapers there may be no tax. And there's some things there's no tax on, like grocery food. If you're buying junk food, then you probably pay tax on it, but if you're buying real food, like an apple, you wouldn't pay tax on it, that kind of thing. Justin, what were you going to say? Yeah, there's lots of states in the U.S. that have very low tax or no tax, and that's one of the reasons why people like to go across the border and shop down there is because the taxes can be quite a bit cheaper. But then sometimes when you bring stuff across the border, you end up paying tax on it. It's called duty, so you have to pay fees on it, that kind of thing. Or if you order stuff online and it comes across the border, sometimes you pay tax here even though you bought it there. So it's complicated. And what you really need to know is wherever, like, you live in Ontario now, but when you're an adult, you might live in a different province or a different country. Is you learn what the tax rate is there, and you pay that. And of course, when you're in a store, they calculate it for you anyway. But what we're going to do is we're going to figure out taxes on this shirt. So if tax is 13%, that's why I was asking, did anybody recognize this? So what we were calculating there was like taxes on something that might cost $64.99. $64.99 looks like what might be the cost of something, because they like to put those 99 cents on, or sometimes they put 95 cents on. So let's take a look at this. So taxes will equal 13%. You don't have to write all of this down, of $34.95. Now we're going to calculate it, which is 13 over 100 times $34.95, and go ahead and figure out what that is. You already got it. How many people have an answer to this? Ethan, do you have the answer? Can you do it? Do you have a calculator right there? 13 divided by 100 times $34.95. What'd you get? 4 point. I'm going to write down all of them. Show me that again. Do you still have that? 4.5435. I like that. The text is so big I can see it from across the room. So here's how we round again. There's going to be a lot of rounding in this money stuff. I want 2 decimal places because it's cents. So you can think about drawing an imaginary line in your head, or if you write the number down, you can actually do it on a page. You look at the next number after the line, and it's a 3, so I'm going to leave it alone. So it's going to be 4.54. Very nice. How much will the shirt cost in total? How do I figure? Justin, is that what you got? You had your hand up before. Did you get the same thing?
Yeah.
Awesome. How much will the shirt cost in total? How do we figure this out? Noah, what do you think? Yeah, we add tax onto the price. Okay, so sometimes we're going to add, sometimes we're going to do something else. A big part of today is you reading questions and thinking about how you're going to solve them. Yeah, it's important to know how to calculate a percentage of something, but we also want to actually solve problems with it. So the cost equals the original cost of the shirt plus tax. And what does that work out to? $34.95 plus 4.54. $39.49. Anybody else get that? And if this was on a test and it was asked like a word problem like this, we'd do a therefore sentence. You don't have to on your whiteboard, but therefore, the total cost of the shirt. And this is where I would include my units, right? So $39.49. All right, I want you to try this one on your whiteboard. On your own, you could do both parts, A and B. Give it a shot. The first question is asking, how much actual money do you save? All right, let's talk about this. I saw a few people doing some stuff with tax. Now, it doesn't say anything about tax. Usually you do look at Part C. You couldn't see it, but it does say, what about the final cost with taxes? So we're not going to worry about taxes until after. When we calculate percentages, if it says tax, we use 13%. But if it gives us the percentage, we're not going to use 13%, right? I want to figure out what 20% of $5.99 is, because that's what it means to get 20% off. 20% off the price is 20% of $5.99 you don't pay. That's what that means. How do I calculate 20% of $5.99? Convert 20% to a decimal and multiply by the number. What does that work out to? So, 20 divided by 100 times 5.99. 119.8. That is a good discount. Almost $120 you're going to save. A lot of people were doing something different, so I want to make sure you understand why we did this. Calculating percentages is pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. Divide by 100 and multiply by the number. Like that's, and we kind of do the same thing every time, but you got to understand what the question is asking. So what's going to be the cost after the discount? Can anybody help me out with that? Kaden? How'd you get that? Very good. So I'm just going to write this down, $5.99. I'm subtracting the amount that I don't pay. Make sure you understand why we do this. The original price was $5.99 for the laptop, but it's discounted 20%. So there's my 20%. So I subtract that from the original cost. $5.99 minus 119.8. 479.2. That means like 20 cents, right? 0.20. What will be the final cost with taxes? So now I pay tax on this final price. So I want you to go ahead and try to figure that out. You got to figure out taxes, and then we add the taxes back on. And I want you to, and we'll take that up. We'll put the answer down in a minute, but I want you to try it on your whiteboard. And you think about how sometimes we're adding on and sometimes we're subtracting, and that's what I'm talking about, problem solving. You got to know when to do which. You got to be able to think through these questions and make sense of them for yourself. Give that a try. So maybe something you do when you're doing these questions is you think to yourself, what is the percentage I'm using? For this question up here, it was 20% because it was 20% off. So we did 20 over 100, right? If I go down here, what's the percentage I'm using? It's taxes, so it's 13%. So I can start by taking my percentage and always just writing it over 100. 13 over 100. Over here I did 20 over 100. Like that could be the step that you always start with. And then we almost always multiply. So times, and I'm finding 13% of that number. So times 479.2. And this is going to give me the amount of taxes. So 13 divided by 100 times 479.2. And I saw a lot of people get this, 62 and 29, but the 6 rounds it up, so it's going to be 62.30. So that's the amount of taxes. And then the total cost after taxes is going to be the 479.2 plus the 62.30. So 479.2 plus 62, 541.5. Therefore, yeah, so it ended up not being a lot less than $5.99. But if you think that includes taxes, that's still pretty good because you would have paid taxes on $5.99. So you would have been paying closer to $600 or $700. So it's not bad in the end. Any questions about that? I think that's our last question. So you've got the practice. You can get started on that. There's a few questions at the top where you just calculate percentage, and then a bunch of sort of more problems that are more interesting to think through.